It's gone past the scheduled time. We have taken the quorum and now elect chairman for the subcommittee on vessels navigating in the vicinity of HKZMB. We need to have a nomination, which is seconded by another member, and the member nominated has to accept the nomination. Any nomination, please. Mr. Frankie Yik nominates me. Mr. Yu Si-wing seconds. I accept the nomination. Beg your pardon. Anything else? We don't need a vice chairman. I accept the nomination. Do we need a vice chairman? No. Shall we invite the administration in, please? Members may wish to refer to THB MA70/16 P14 and also the Secretariat's brief. I won't read out the numbering. I'm sure you have all got the papers.
OK， 唔好意思啊。
好啊，咁我哋有。All right, administration, can you take us through the paper, please? Good morning, Chairman, members. There are two pieces for amendment, and the first one is the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge. We are imposing conditions to make sure that marine traffic will be safe. There are two link roads. One is the Hong Kong Link Road connecting with the main bridge. The other one is the Tumen-Chat-Lap-Kok Link. There are so many piers, and vessels can sail through the arches, and we have different heights for the different arches. So we're imposing height restriction for the Tumen-Chat-Lap-Kok link. It is 2112 and 6 meters. For the Hong Kong Hong Kong link, it is 4112, 10 and 5 meters. I'm sure members are most concerned about the different heights of the arches, and the vessels might find it difficult to know where they stand. We have some information prepared for members' information. Table before members contains is a paper that contains the color-coded references for the vessel operators for them to understand the height restriction. For each piers, there is the height restriction. The yellow one, the height restriction is 5 meters. Further along in the middle, you have the white tack. It is 12 meters. So we have different color coding for the different height restrictions. And there are some arches that can emit larger vessels, and the navigation channels will be fitted with the signaling, the green and red signaling for the vessels. And this is the commonly used signals. We have the flashing white light to facilitate the vessels that are sailing in thick fog. Also, other than the height restrictions in the main navigation channel, we have marine traffic arrangement in place. That's on page 2 of the diagram, now we allow vessels of 41 meters high, and we have one directional traffic. One is for the southbound traffic, the other one for the northbound traffic. For the middle arch, we allow only small vessels of 10 meters in length. Again, we have the navigational lighting, the green and red lighting, and the flashing white light. There is also the radar navigational aid. The vessels that are sailing through will be able to detect the radar signal for them to sail through. Now we have also the no entry sign put up at the appropriate location. These are the marine traffic arrangement at the piers of the bridge. Before the commencement of the law, the Marine Department will be mounting publicity and briefing sessions to make the vessel operators aware of the control regime. The other proposal is of a rather technical nature. With the construction of Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, a reclamation has been undertaken, and we have the coordinates that have to be amended, and certain swathes of the sea have been reclaimed, and we have to amend the coordinates. And these are technical amendments to tie in with all these arrangements. Now, for the two amendments, we hope that we can bring them into effect on the 1st of December. Thanks very much, Chairman. All right, Mr. Wu Chi-wai, and then Mr. Frankie Yik, Mr. Yu Si-wing. 5 minutes, please. Chairman, I think it is necessary for us to amend the legislation or the regulation. The Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge is more like a wall erected in the western waters of Hong Kong, 41 meters. I'd like to understand what it means. Would this restrict the movement of vessels or the free choice of navigation channels to the west of Hong Kong? And when vessels are guided into Hong Kong, do we need to have any navigational aid slightly further away? With large vessels, it would be rather difficult for them to change direction, and they do need more radius to maneuver, and also the displacement ratio of a ship. Now, if a ship is fully loaded and not loaded, will this have any implication on the height of the vessels? Administration, that this is not a main navigation channel. The container vessels do not use this particular channel. Before works were underway, now for the Tumon-Chanapkok link, we had about 200 vessels using this channel. And for the Hong Kong link, the number is 100 or so. Now, for 41 meters vessels, they have a high displacement value, and they are large vessels. I can defer you to Mr. Chuck regarding the details.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Wu. Just let me explain how tall is 41 meters. This 41 meters is similar to the Cap Simon Bridge, is identical for the height restriction of that bridge, which is sufficient for the majority of the local vessels, except and for those really tall ships. Otherwise, the local vessels will have no problem crossing it. And for the river vessels with no issues, and for Cap Simon, a lot of ships to pass south towards Victoria Harbour So it's just quite clearly explained. And this 41-meter height restriction is designed for the western waters. Traffic there would not have any impact at all. I wouldn't tell because the western waters you're referring just mainly for the river vessels or those vessels from the mainland China. Thus, the 41-meter height restriction will be sufficient because for the western waters there's no major port facilities, and the river trade vessel would visit Hong Kong. And our local vessels will also arrive there as well. Our container ship mainly requires southern and the eastern waters. And the Victoria, enter through the Victoria Harbor and pass through Amsterdam Road and travel up to Shek-Hao through this navigation channel. And for the west of Taiyuan, there's no ocean liner activity. And for the navigational aid, and there's no radar facilities in the bridges before. And for this bridge, this is the first time that such facilities will be installed, with the advantages that in case of heavy fog, these facilities would help the ships, especially the ocean liner ship, would have radar already installed, so they can look from a far distance of seeing the signal and help them identify the location which they can sail towards the center of the bridge to pass through. And this is a universal installation. Would that also be installed at Kap-Sui-Man Bridge, where the last time accident happened? Please answer briefly because it's a bit out of scope. So would that be installed in Kap-Sui-Man Bridge? And since that, the member had proposed that I will consider that to see how the situation goes. Thank you. Any other follow-up matters? Mr. Wu? Mr. Yik? Looking at this graphic, and shows when you, this is a lot of signage when it's is it complicated, or is it rather than this seeing the most critical? For example, the blue color restrictions, you wouldn't able to see it until you're at a rather close distance. Is it necessary to have another one? I'm not familiar with maritime regulations. If I only see it from a close distance, I need to see each sign clearly. It would take time. So why not have a clear sign of 41 meters of international standard that allow them to see clearly? And for the pillar 1920, was that going to be in place, or just for the illustration purposes? So was that necessary? These signs are a different proportion to the bridge. They're not really drawn to scale, because in reality it wouldn't be the same, because it seems to be quite confusing to me. And for these 41 meters restriction, it seems to be most critical. I could not visualize how big would the sign be, or can you project it? Would that be half the size of the screen? Can we have Highways Department to respond to this? So you have no dimensions of the signs. The signs dimension will be similar to those at the Taiyuan Bridge. I have no idea how big the signs are there at the Kap-Sui-Man Bridge. I would like to get a rough idea, like say 3 meters or 2 meters and so on. Just want to get a rough idea. Would we have such information at hand? I hope those operating the ships were able to see their signs from afar of the height restrictions. Why I'm saying this, because on the road, all of a sudden there's a huge bunch of signs, and then you just pass the junctions. Of course, the ships are slower than the cars, and for those unnecessary signs, you probably could be, so you can see a lot of duplication. The blue color I know how to read the sign. The words are rather meaningless. So I just want to check out the text. So I hope you could consider if it's unless it's stipulated by law, but otherwise could it be simplified? So that at a quick glance that they know there will be high restrictions. And thanks for the member's suggestion. If there's too many signs, there will be a confusing information and we have to distract attention. So when we are formal execution, we would pay attention to that. And at the electrical background brief, also mentioned that at the last panel meeting, the members have asked whether there will be anti-shop-bridge collision facilities. I said on the May 25th, we submitted a document the last night and weren't able to locate the document. Can you repeat whether there will be any anti-collision measures? Can we have the Highways Department respond to this? Thanks for the member's question. And we have some protective measures in place at the major navigation channels in the western waters. We have an independent have an independent facility to withstand of any potential collision, and on the airport navigation channels, which is rather narrow and for smaller ships and at slower speed, so we have some fender in place. Just a follow-up question. This is a 41 meters, quite clear. How about the white one that mentioned that we said to be height restriction of 12 meters? And for the layman, this doesn't mean anything to us. So we have 41 next to the 12. Does that mean that all other under the bridge will be have a restriction of 12 meters? Highways Department. The white will be 12 meters. That will be, the 12 meters will be the next to it, and then the further one will be even lower. Thus, we have a variety of height restrictions. However, that doesn't mean the one next to 12 meters. It wouldn't be. So it would be a varied height restriction. So this batch will be 12, and then the one next to it will be slightly lower, and so on. Mr. Yu, I'd like to ask. Well, it's quite clear. Clear sight lines in daytime. However, what sort of facilities would you have at night for the ships to clearly identify them, whether day or nighttime? These signages. You said there would be some education work with the trade in Hong Kong. However, for mainland, some ships may pass through these navigation channels. If so, would you relay such information to the relevant main authorities to let them know what's going on, so that they can conduct their own education, so that when their ships come out the waters, even though there's a small number of them, they could use this channel by accident and so on. So this. Also, can Mr. Chuck explain what is the communication with the main authority, and have Mr. Pang to explain the lighting situation at night? Highways Department. Thanks for the member's question. For the communication with the main authorities, we communicate with the maritime authorities in mainland, and after the amendments, we will promote the regulations to them to let the mainland ships operators aware of the arrangements. This is simply a short answer. So what are the penalties arrangements, just in case of the contravene regulations, and what would they happy to be told as well? As for this kind of details, they will be introduced as well. And if they contravene such restrictions, there will be penalty of $10,000 and 6-month imprisonment in severe cases. Is there any proceedings? What was the past judgments. Penalties about $2,000 to $3,000. So, Mr. Yu asked the question, so I just pass it back to you. And for the signage, clarity of signage for day and night. There are 3 navigation channels: the Western Waters, the Airport Waters, and the Chongchong. And the bridge piers would install a lighting system to lit up the signages, the height restriction signages, so you can see the height restriction signs at night. Is there any sort of monitoring system since the last Kap-Shui-Mun Bridge incident, where the word about in the event of accident on which ships to trace, will the monitoring system be strengthened? And thanks for questioning. And at the Hong Kong link, after the commissioning of the bridge, we would install some facilities to monitor for any abnormal activity. There will be information passed on to the control center to let them aware what's going on, where ships will be dispatched to inspect the condition of the bridge.
Any recording or any warning signals? If there are problems with a vessel, will you issue any? Would there be any recording of the movement of the vessel that can be used as evidence? We don't have the recording system, but we can certainly consider this proactively. Mr. Yu, this is a new bridge, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. You might wish to consider it. Yes, we do have systems that have recording facilities, but we will consider whether these can be incorporated into the system. Mr. Yu, will this will this form part of the law? To respond to members, we don't have this system at the moment. As to whether there is a need for that, we'll consider it. Mr. Yu? Would like to spend his time? We have plenty of time today. And it's my turn next. I'd like to follow up on Mr. Yu Xiwing's suggestion. Would there be any surveillance system to guard against the vessels? Now, there would not be any time to stop them if they're too close. But will there be any warning signals that can be sounded for them to avoid any collision? I'm also concerned about the consultation and publicity for local vessels and for mainland vessels. The director gave us a very brief reply. Vessels from outside of Hong Kong have to understand our signage. Like the Secretary said, we have 41, 12, 10, 5 meters. The lighting, the signage, all of them are new. Now, other than the 41 meter, which is the same as the Kap-Shui-Mun Bridge, I'm not sure they understand the signage. Some vessel operators do not understand traditional Chinese characters. They don't understand English. So how are you going to make the users from the mainland aware of the arrangement for the bridge? I suggested this subcommittee to be formed because the trade operators are not clear about the situation. And you might wish to have a briefing. And you're not going to change the 41 meters to 35, for example. And you should make available some guidelines, some publicity materials to them, to make them aware of the arrangement, please. Mr. Chuck. Chairman, as the Secretary said, we're going to show the arrangement for the restriction. Once we have worked out the details with the Highways Department, we will be producing publicity materials, and we will arrange for a briefing for the trade, and all the practitioners will be invited to these briefings. We're going to produce the pamphlets which can be made available to the operators, so that they are well briefed about the restrictions prior to the commencement. And all these will be undertaken soon. According to the administration, in 2017, this will be commissioned. I'm sure that by the middle part of next year, this will be commissioned. So you're going to have about a year's time. I hope that during this year, do you have any timetable? I assume that it's June. We don't have a specific timetable. Under the law, we like to bring this into operation on the 1st of December because all the bridge will be available. Now, you're going to have about 5 months till the end of the year, and I don't think you would be hosting 1 or 2 briefings because of the sheer size of the trade. Now, you're going to be revising the amendment regulation. I'm not sure whether you have sufficient time. I think you should tell the trade what you're going to do in good time. By the time the whole thing is completed, you conduct another briefing for them to make them aware of this. The 41, 12, 10, and 5 meters, referring to the diagram shown by Mr. Frankie Yick. Now, for the 41 meters, it would be easy because this is the hardest part to collide into. What about 12, 10, and 5 meters? What signage would there be? Well, Chairman, for the piers, we have the color coding. White denotes 5 meters, yellow 5, white 12. So when the vessels are approaching and see the yellow signage, they would know what the height restriction is all about. It should be very clear. Now, looking at this diagram, it would be hard to visualize the actual situation at sea. Now, we've been to the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao bridge. We look at it from the bridge. We haven't been at the sea. So I hope that maybe after today's meeting, you give us some information about the situation at sea, and we can take a boat trip to understand the situation. It would be good for a boat trip, but I'm not sure whether we can assemble the whole team of members. If you can take some photos, the trade, the electrical members can publicize this for you, and this is one way of giving publicity. Right, understood. This diagram contains the proposed arrangement. We don't have the signage fitted on the bridge piers. Now, on the bridge piers, we're going to have the sign denoting the height restriction. The vessel operators should be able to see from afar what they are, and we will be making available to members the final product. When's it available? I don't think it would present any difficulties. 3-hour ads is not completed yet. You still have the diagram. I think with 3D technology, you should be able to come up with something. Yes, we produced this diagram just so the members will have some ideas. Next, please. A quick question, if I may. Mr. Jeremy Tam. The reclamation in Dongchong is going on. There will be 2 problems. This would take up quite a bit of space. Will there be any implications on the navigation channel? Have you assessed the volume of the traffic? Would there be any further narrowing of the navigational channels? Now, there are plans to build a marine club for water sports and water activities. Will there be any impacts between them? Permanent Secretary? Yes, we've looked at the reclamation in Dongcheng. There will be no implications on the navigational channel. There will be a yacht club, and the yachts are not really large, so the impact would be negligible. Mr. Tam, no more questions, thank you. Mr. Wu-Chi-Wai, second round. 4 minutes, please. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to clear up the concepts. Now you have the signage, the details, and so on. What is the standard? How far should the vessel operators be able to spot these signage? And for the radar information, how far would they be able to pick up the information? How far from the bridge, I mean? It seems that for each arch, you allow the vessels to sail through depending on the height of the vessels. Don't you have any navigational channels designated for different heights? And you guide the vessels to sail through the navigational channels. It seems from listening to you that you have navigational channels all over the place. I'd like to clear up the concept about navigational channels first. And second, I am a little bit confused in terms of height restriction. 41 meters, and the next lane is 12 meters. I think this is the one. I'm not sure that I've got it right. Now, on one side 41 meters, on the other side the height restriction is 10, or 10 is the length of the vessel, beg your pardon. Now you have 41 meter height restriction. And you have different color coding. One is brown, one is red, isn't it? Yes, the brown one is for 41 meter clearance. And this is a special restricted zone. We have the southbound, northbound lanes. For the middle arch, we don't allow the large vessels. We only allow small vessels which are 10 meters in length, and these are smaller vessels. And this is related to what you asked earlier on. For large vessels, they do follow a channel. In Hong Kong, there are so many smaller vessels, the fishing boats and so on, and they enjoy more freedom at sea. But when there are bridges, they have to use the channel that is allowed for the smaller vessels. So that's the idea behind it. Mr. Wu? This regulation applies to the Hong Kong link and also the Tumon-Chat-Lap-Kok link. For the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao bridge, you have the height restriction in the middle of the bridge. Do they have the signage which is exactly the same as ours? Well, for the main bridge, it is outside Hong Kong's jurisdiction. Mr. Chek, do you have any information there? Mr. Wu also asked about the sightline distance. They're given in common whether how to deal with the situation. Yes, Mr. Chek. For the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao bridge, the main bridge section, we did ask the mainland authorities We haven't got the details for us yet, so we don't have information in hand for the time being.
For the sightline issues and in unclear visibility at sea, we'll be talking about 2 maritime miles, nautical miles, and in such environment, the color of these signages in clear sightlines, it should be one to see it from 1 nautical miles away. Just let me further elaborate. And we have introduced a district separation. We have a 41-meter zone, 12-meter zone, 5-meter zones, and they would be denoted by the color of the signage. And when we make the introduction, we will inform people that the 41 meters zone, its background color will be brown, and with 12 meters zone, the background color will be white, and the 5 meters zones will be yellow. So each color in the bridge pier signs after our publicity effort, they should become aware of the which height restrictions, or the various height restrictions under the bridge. That would be easier for them to present to the ship operators, because there's a lot of bridge piers below that. As for this, especially for bigger ships, they couldn't be visibility, but how they would use the radar, and so there will be a clear display of information on the radar. So would you provide some sort of simulation and what sort of information would the ship operator would receive, and that would help us to understand better. Any supplement for the government? So probably just let me tell this to Mr. Wu. And for the operation at sea, besides the publicity effort, the most important arrangement would be the maritime maps would be quite important. This maritime signs would be denoted as quickly as possible, especially the mainland ships. They have to use the latest maritime maps, which show the light signs. For example, the yellow, the red, white light, and so on. They'll be clearly denoted in the maritime maps. Before they arrive in Hong Kong, they would be familiar with the situation of the Hong Kong waters, and so they could know which because of these signs, these lightings will be able to see it from afar. We actually have installed an Raycon detector, so if they have a radar, they will be picked up such information very clearly. That would be arrangement. Just a quick, simple question. Now the limits have yet to be passed up, and the bridges are already there. So this information for the bridges had already been updated to the maritime map makers. Let's say for the GPS makers had already been informed. Not yet. They'll be arranged afterwards, because it had to tie in with the commissioning of the system. And for the present, if we have yet to have installed the system, but now the bridge is already physically present, what do you use to provide navigation aid? Because it's still a work site, and the certain area, the contractor would actually would monitor the ships. So the area is more or less cordoned off. Well, what is actually a work site? I understand. So this is the Czech Lab Tumunj Road. So they have to be connected. So they would, for the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao bridge, they have to be connected, thus to be sealed off. And if this facility have yet to be installed, or haven't produced to update the relevant maps on the different height restrictions of the areas, and so the ship operator would face this level of risk. So maybe I will let the government administration representative follow up. So Mr. Yik, a few issues just to follow up on Mr. Yu's question on the video recording system. I urge the Highways Department to seriously consider it because it do not to require real-time monitoring. So we need to go back to the footage in terms of accidents and so on. And ships will simply run away after accidents, especially for the river trade vessels. So it's better to have some record. And the chairman have asked for briefing sessions, which I'd agree to as well. Just remind that for the urged sessions, these sessions will not be only conducted by the statutory consultative organizations. After you have the consultation with the development committees, the information was released to the individual members, and after the rules came into effect, the members would be quite surprised. And for example, the REE regulations, the trade would actually suddenly sound very surprised and shocked that the livelihood would jeopardize. So the dissemination of information would be aimed at the members instead of the statutory consultative bodies. And the third point would be the mock-up, because the bridge, if you have the relevant plan in mind, is better to have prepared. So I don't mind using the Marine Department to take a visit there, because in kind of bad weather, how far would you able to see the sign, especially the air quality of that waters? Would you understand something? It could be led to poor visibility. And the fourth point, and the color of the signage, like brown color, I suggest a change to that. In terms of visual, which are the colors that will be easily spotted by the human eye? Orange is the easiest. So for the 41, which is because only the biggest ships are there, I suggest you use orange instead of brown, because brown might not be easily visible. Color scheme is quite important. And for the Marine Department, and during the construction of the new airport, the sand barges will cross Victoria Harbour and hitting a lot of ferries, and there's no way to trace that. I know where do we large-scale reclamation of the Marine Department to monitor the marine traffic, and the sand barges from mainland. They may not be too orderly, so maybe some effort will be put into monitoring them. Yes, I understand. We'll follow up on that. Thank you, Dr. Kwok. 5 minutes. I'm sorry, because next door I would not like to repeat the information, so apologies in advance in case this happened. And I heard the government could answer two things. The first, the new Tongcheng reclamation to think of having a marina, because I'm not sure how the proposed marina had a consulting Marine Department. And what is the marina's impact to ferries or ships related to the airport? Have government considered the safety issues with the leisure boats? Also, could like ask about the navigation channels for the leisure boats. Are there a lot of mainlanders only leisure boats in Hong Kong? Would they pass through the waters concerned, or pass through the bridge to return to Zhuhai or to their berth in mainland? And what is their estimate on the numbers? And last time I've asked, there will be a proposed water sports center. But if this plan is to go forward, the current red restrictions and the navigation restrictions would make that water sports center unfeasible. Or if possible, what kind of sports would have a lower risk? And could the questions be answered? Mr. Tam had briefly asked a similar question. Thank you. The Chongqing reclamation, the marinas and so on, and would have no conflict with our current plans and have a negligible impact. And for the leisure boats, they don't have a fixed navigation channels. And in terms of the figures, let's say how many mainlanders only leisure boats, so we do not have such numbers. And what happened? He answered, what is the number of boats that would need to pass through the waters? So I would like to know about the impact. As for the future sports center that will not be affected, just want to clarify that. Dr. Squaw's question, even though you not have the numbers of mainland leisure boats, so however, the government should have kept tally on the Hong Kong leisure boats. So you estimate for New Territory West, there's 90 leisure boat parking berths, and are you expecting a sudden increase of traffic? We do have keep the number of leisure boats in Hong Kong. So so let's see if Mr. Chuck let's see if any carry such assessment. Just responding to Mr. Kwok's question. And on the border crossing of leisure boats, it's actually on the rather low side, even though there will be increase of relevant activity, because on the leisure boats and for the Chongcheng navigation channels, because there will be 110 navigation channels, thus there will be 21 height meter restrictions, and for this kind of leisure boats, it would normally they wouldn't be affected unless we talk about some really tall yachts. However, they weren't looked into. Thus, the proposed marina would not be affected, and for the activity of the leisure boats and for the design of the navigation channels, and once they leave Hong Kong waters and to enter mainland waters, the impact will also be negligible in terms of the whole day traffic, because Hong Kong is a very busy harbor. For example, if they want to apply leaving Hong Kong waters, and in terms of the per traffic flow, the traffic generated will be negligible. In our assessment, we do not see any issues. Mr. Chuck, let me ask some question. I know there are a few times that Hong Kong and Macau would conduct high yacht races together. These yachts are rather tall, and when they pass through these ships' beaches in the future, would there be any difficulty, or whether there will be any restrictions in place? And if the events would be it's going towards Victoria Harbour, there will be no impact. I'm talking about the Hong Kong Macau. Oh, the yacht will not pass through these waters. These waters will actually enter Chongcheng, and they will know that these waters is over a rather limited area. Second round questioning, Mr. Tam. So if the Chongcheng Marina was built, the ships there would be rather small. Just wanted to occur with Dr. Kwok. Remember, there are yachts would be placed, and the 12-meter restrictions. There would it be possible that there will be struck collision, and for the problem of signages, I'm sure the signages will be lit. Will be illuminated, and on the bridge there will be lighting in place that will be projected onto the signages, and for the materials are very reflective. And the Marine Department mentioned that using U2 nautical miles as a yardstick of visibility. And if the visibility is below 2 nautical miles, I'm talking about daytime, with lighting be switched on for the ships to see the signs. With such arrangements being in place, Mr. Chuck, and for navigation aid, especially for major carriageway, we have a green and red lightings, and in case of poor visibility, that would help ships crossing the bridge Let me ask clearly. Are they on all the time? Will they be on all the time?
明白，主席。咁但
Yes, red, green, and white. What about the signage? Will it be lit up? Yes, for the navigational aid, we will put them on the navigational map. For the signage, I defer to the highways. Now, when the visibility is not high, will there be any illumination? Yes, the idea is to make the signage visible when the visibility is low. I'm not sure about other locations. Now, if there is illumination, which is used at night, but when the visibility dips to a certain level, will you turn on the lighting? Will you light it up? Mr. Yong? Chairman, thank you. Now, for the navigational channel, it depends on the weather condition. If the weather is bad, the lighting will be turned on. What about the signage? We are considering solar-powered lighting. When the weather is good, there would be power saving, and when the weather is bad, there would be illumination. How is it activated? Is it activated manually or what? Unless I have a sensor to gauge the visibility. Or is it like the street lighting? You have a trigger. Yes, for the main channel, we do have the sensors. It will be turned on at a certain visibility, isn't it? During the day, the visibility has got nothing to do with how bright it is. If it is in thick fog, for instance, it would be different. We also have a manual system and also an automatic lighting system. We're going to develop a plan. We're still threshing out the details of the system. We will consider this and see whether we can take on board members' suggestions. In broad daylight, when the visibility is low, we will consider how best we can handle it. Mr. Tam, if it is pouring down, the visibility can be low. Will you supplement any further information? A collision normally occurs when the visibility is bad. During the day, the visibility can be low. And also the color coding. Is there any international standard for the color coding? Does it have to be brown? Is there any international law that applies? I don't really want to reinvent the wheel for Hong Kong. Right, please jot down the details. It's only a question of the brightness. If the visibility is low, you have all the different options to make sure that the navigation is safe. Is that okay, Mr. Tam? Yes. Dr. Kokaki, 4 minutes, second round. Following on from Mr. Tam's question. For navigational safety management, is it the Marine Department or Highways or the bridge management office that will be managing the bridge? And what is the level of manpower? Now, you have the Tinkau Bridge and the Lantau Link that good for comparison purposes. Administration, highways. Well, he named a number of departments. Highways. Manpower level. Once the project is completed, we're going to have a level of manpower. We don't have the specific figures. How does it compare with the Lantau Link and the Rambler Channel Bridge? What is the level of manpower? Is it Marine Department, Highways? Do take this together with the Lantau link. The Marine Department has a navigational management center, which is in charge of the whole of Hong Kong. We don't need any extra manpower to monitor the situation. As regards the day-to-day management, maintenance and repair, it is within the remit of the Highways Department. Maybe they need to inject more manpower, but they will get sufficient resources for the day-to-day work. Mr. Chair, anything to add? If I may, Chairman, for marine traffic, it is within the remit of the Marine Department. As the Permanent Secretary said, we do have a navigational control center. We do have the radar system to keep the marine movement under surveillance, and this bridge will come within the jurisdiction of the center as well. And we also have patrol boats making their rounds. Now for the North Lantau development, we have an extra patrol boat to manage the marine traffic there. Dr. Kwok, I do think I need to repeat the collision that occurred at Chiang Mai Bridge and all the undesirable consequences on the bridge. That this bridge might be slightly better because it will not impact on the traffic in Hong Kong. But we don't really want to see a repeat of that incident. I remember when the collision occurred, it was reported that there was a vessel and there was a monitoring and observation center right or in the vicinity. Will there be any surveillance center in the vicinity that will be monitoring the movement of the vessels? That this is important. The vessels are all over the sea, and this bridge is an important bridge. You probably don't need to do it yourself, but under the surveillance center, there should be proper surveillance, because once collision occurred, there will be implications on the marine traffic and also on the bridge traffic administration. I think we have addressed this, that the collision occurred at Kap Shui Mun Bridge and not the Chiang Mai Bridge. I would be very scared if it involves the Chiang Mai Bridge. Since the accident, the Marine Department has stepped up patrol at sea, as Mr. Chek said, in this control zone. Once this has been brought into effect, there will be patrol boats making their rounds in this area. Dr. Kwok, I'm not talking about the ship, the patrol boats. I'm talking about a surveillance point. Mr. Chek? Chairman, we don't need to establish another center there, because with technology, the Marine Department's surveillance can be undertaken at headquarters. And we can take advantage of the radar signals and the technology to monitor the situation. Now you can spot the height of the ships. For local vessels, if they are as high as 41 meters, we would remind the licensees, the license owners, remind them what channels they have to use. And we are going to have an endorsement in the license denoting the channels that they will have to use when crossing the bridge. For river trade vessels, they have to report to us their height, and we will also monitor the situation. But with the surveillance center, be able to know the height of the vessels. If not, how can you ensure safety? vessels have to be fitted with an identification system. We do have the information like the size, the dimension, the length, and so on. Now, with this identification system, the surveillance center will. Well, many mainland vessels don't have an AIS. Increasingly, they do. Not all of them. Now, how many mainland vessels are fitted with AIS? Mr. Check? I don't have the information here because this is not within my portfolio, and I think I have to supplement the information. Please do after the meeting. Now, during the collision, there was no AIS on the vessel. It was an accident. There was a barge, and the crane wasn't lowered as it should. And when it crossed under the bridge, it hit the side of the bridge, and it was an unfortunate accident. By way of information, in the mainland, we have fishing vessels and mainland vessels. The AIS is something that is a must. So going forward, this is really something that they would have. In the light of Dr. Kwok's question, will you give us information on the mainland vessels that are coming to Hong Kong, whether they have AIS fitted on them? All right. Unless you have any further question, let me get my last question in. Mr. Yik, 4 minutes, please. Now, for the capturing one collision, Mr. Churk, you must be more familiar. There are due mistakes under the license, and the vessel is not supposed to sail underneath the bridge. Second, the vessel operator didn't lower the crane, so it was a double error. Let me get my question in. My last question about the consultation. I'm sure there will be a lot of marine works that will be undertaken, like Mr. Frankie Yik said. You have the Port Management Committee that was consulted. Many fisher folk are very concerned about this. They react very strongly. They asked us to tell the administration that they should be consulted. And for other marine works that would have implications on the fisher folks, you should tell them in advance what's going to happen. Like Mr. Yik said, you consulted the main board, but maybe 90% of the stakeholders are not aware of what's going on. So I think you have to pay attention to this. So I'd like to hear from the Marine Department or the administration how they're going to do it in future. Yes, Mr. Check. Right, I've heard what you had to say. I will work out the consultation arrangement and see how this can be improved. Yes, people get the feeling that they are given a short shrift. You've briefed the board, but the fisher folks are not aware of that. Now, we had this at the Economic Development Panel, and this will be Gazette on Friday. Nobody bothers reading the Gazette. So you have cut off the communication with the stakeholders, and this is not really good. Yes, I will appreciate that, and I appreciate the advice. We'll do better. All right, shall we move on to clause by clause? All right, I give you the floor. Right, this is a very straightforward amendment regulation. Let's stick to the marked up copy. The first one is 15, radio telephone equipment. We are amending the textual or the wording, the text on page 223. We propose to add 6E, and this is about the northbound and southbound restriction that I alluded to earlier on. And then 23A, We are changing the Chinese character for the bridge pier. We would like to use the proper Chinese character for that. And then moving on, 23 or 3B, 3C and 3D. That's what I said. In 3B, we add 21, 10 and 6 meters. 3C, 41, 12, 10 and 5 meters are added. And then moving on, the penalty, we have some consequential amendment in response to the addition of 3B, 3C and 3D. That's so much for the first amendment. Now for the next one, there are so many numbers. These are the coordinates. Right, as a side issue, some members mentioned the penalty. Will you consider revising the penalty? No, we haven't any amendments. Now is $10,000 and 6 months penalty.
I'm
not talking about a lax or too rigorous. Members suggested whether we review in the future. Mr. Yick. So it depends how what is the judgment delivered by the courts. However, once you lift the basic penalty that would enhance the deterrent, that we could conduct a review on the penalty. Mr. Yick had a good question. I would ask, have any residents? They're usually 2,000 to 3,000 fine. That would, of course, that would be the court. So even for littering, you have to charge for the same amount. So you need to go back to think about it. We need to look at the penalty. And the legal notice on the Schedule 5. On the second part of the amendment, on the Schedule 5, it stated 8 types of the boundaries of the HKIAA. Because I mentioned the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, some areas have been reclaimed, and thus the coordinates would have to be amended. And these are the list of amendments. And we have no idea if the figures are correct. Okay, yeah, we can confirm about that, because not everyone to understand them. Okay, this advice from the legal advisor. And the footnote of the page 19, page 19 of the Chinese version. It's a matter of coordinates. I hope you provide the information. WGS 84. Can you mention, and what sort of document is this? WGS 84. Let's talk about the long latitude and longitude reference. And I couldn't remember what year this started. And for the new coordinates, I'm using this of a basis. So we state that this is a standard. This is basically where it stopped. There was with any other set of standard for the unamended. They're using a different standard. And so when we're using news as a standard that been adopted internationally, so we actually need to state it clear that we are adopting such standard. And for the older ones, we consider amending them in the future, or because they could be phased out. That we need to consider. Any other questions? Cap 548, and these are suggestions that are applicable to ocean ships. And for the 588 is to have a similar revisions. However, they would apply to local vessels. And 19 had to with the Chinese word for bridge. So minor textual amendment for section 18. It just has some simple textual amendment. And for section 18B, just have to adopt the corresponding height restriction on 12 and 6 for meter restriction for local vessels, and for the 18B, and for the height restrictions 41, 12, 10, and 5 meters were to be applied to local vessels. And for section 20, as for the penalty have been updated. For the, we would actually also look into the penalty situation, whether they were too lenient or too strict. That would be all. So let's go back to the procedure. Mr. Yik, since you're the only one left, do we need to invite deputations from the public or shipping? Would it be necessary? Okay, if so, that will be done in writing. With the legislative timetable and extension of the scrutiny period. Do we need to read that out? Oh, probably not. And they'll be expired on the 21st of June 2017. Sufficient time for scrutiny by the subcommittee and the House committee. They could wish to move a resolution of the council meeting to extend the scrutiny period to 12th of July. If so, now that we finished the vetting, that will be necessary. If there are no other business, to declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
搞掂，多謝晒。
好，多謝主席。
要你提交嘅嘢，你自己識做㗎啦。